Hi Rockets! Today we'll read a story that's connected to our clothing study. The story is connected to our clothing study because it's about a family that lives inside of something that you wear. This is a family that lives inside a shoe. Let me show you the cover of this book. The title of this book is There Was an Old Woman Who Lived in a Shoe, and the author and illustrator is Jane Cabrera. So Jane Cabrera wrote the words and drew the pictures. From the cover of this book, you'll see the title character, the old woman, and you'll see her family here. If you look in the background, you'll see the giant shoe that has become their house. As we read this story today, we'll not only find out how this family lives inside of a house, but we'll also learn some new words. Before we start to read, I'm going to introduce you to these new words so that you'll expect them. You'll be able to listen for them when you see the pages that I'll show you now. Our first new word is the word stew. A stew is a type of thick soup made from vegetables or meat. And you'll see that the little old woman has a big pot of stew right here, and that the children are eating the stew out of bowls. So when we get to this page where the family's eating, you'll listen for that new word stew, and remember that that's a thick soup. Our next word that we'll learn is the word tatty. Tatty means old or torn or not in very good condition. If you look closely at the picture, you'll notice that the children's clothes are torn and old. So when we hear the word tatty, it will be used to talk about the children's clothes. The next new word that we'll learn is the word mend. The word mend means to fix or repair. If you look closely at this picture, you'll see the little old woman with a needle and thread. Notice how the clothes no longer have holes. So on this page, we'll listen for that word mend, and we'll remember that it means to fix or repair. And that's what the little old woman has done to these clothes. The final new word that we'll learn is the word hullabaloo. Hullabaloo means a lot of noise or a lot of fuss. And as you'll notice, the picture on this page is quite busy. We'll take a closer look at all of this hullabaloo when we get to this page. All right, let's start reading. This is There Was an Old Woman Who Lived in a Shoe, written and illustrated by Jane Cabrera. Here we have many different types of shoes. Is there one that you think might be better to live in than others? There Was an Old Woman Who Lived in a Shoe by Jane Cabrera. Right here it says, for sale, giant's old shoe. If you take a look at the shoe here, you'll notice that it's kind of worn and beat up. It has some holes in it. This shoe used to belong to a giant. He put it up for sale, and I think the little old woman bought it for her house. She's fixed it up and made it into a really lovely home. There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children and animals too. I was wondering why there were so many clothes on the clothesline back here. Now I understand it's because a lot of people live in this house, not just the old woman, a lot of children and animals too. Let's find out who they are. Bertha, Martha, Sky and Bob, Eric, Edith, Esme, Pob, John, Jane, Jack and Jill, Kai, Rosa, and baby Bill. I heard some rhymes. There was an old woman who lived in a shoe, and when the children were hungry, she made them, do you remember our new word? What the family was eating? She made them a stew. Do you remember what the word stew stew means? Yeah, it's a type of food, something to eat. It's a thick soup, often made out of meat or vegetables. That's what she made for them to eat. It's made of potatoes and coconut and carrots and peas. And she kissed them all lovingly when they said, "More, please." There was an old woman who lived in a shoe, and when the car broke down, before I turn the page, let's take a moment to look at this car. What do you notice about the car? It's also a shoe, just like their house. It seems like this little old woman really likes to repurpose shoes into other things. Unfortunately, right now, their shoe car doesn't seem to be working. They're all pushing it. It's broken down. So when the car broke down, they rode a new, this big antelope. They all held tight, sitting side by side, and she kissed them all lovingly at the end of the ride. One of our new words is on this page. Do you remember what it was? There was an old woman who lived in a shoe, and when the clothes got tatty, do you remember what the word tatty means? If you need a clue, take a look at the children's clothing. Tatty means old and torn, not in very good condition. These clothes are torn up. So when the clothes got tatty, she'd mend and make new. That was one of our new words as well. Mend means to fix or repair. The little old woman fixed these clothes. Notice there's no more holes. She covered up the holes with patches and pictures, pockets, and new fabric. She fixed them, or she mended them. She'd mend and make do. What fabulous clothes, such colorful cloth. And she kissed them all lovingly when they showed them off. I wonder if you have a connection to these kids when you get a new piece of clothing, or maybe a new to you piece of clothing, or maybe when you fix up an old piece of clothing. It feels pretty good to show them off to your friends, your teachers, the people in your community. Wearing new clothes can make us feel really special. There was an old woman who lived in a shoe, and when the furniture broke, why do you think the couch broke? I see a lot of people sitting on it. When the furniture broke, she stuck it with glue and hammered and nailed and screwed here and there, and she kissed them all lovingly from her wobbly chair. I'm noticing that the little old woman is really handy. Not only did she turn an old giant's shoe into a house, but she also repaired or mended the tatty clothes, and now she's fixed the broken couch. She's really handy. There was an old woman who lived in a shoe, and some days were just a big hullabaloo. That was one of our new words as well. Hullabaloo means a lot of noise or a lot of fuss. What do you notice going on in this picture that you think might be causing all of the hullabaloo? Maybe it's everything together, but take a closer look to see if there's anything in particular that you think might be really loud, if you see anyone having a fuss. I see these two fighting over a toy. I see this friend playing the drums. That's pretty loud inside. Oh no, I see that someone's stepped in paint and is making tracks on the floor. And that the baby is actually drawing with crayons on the floor. What a mess. Such a noisy day. So much noise. What a messy muddle. But all was made better by a big soft. Cuddle. And she's saying to the kids and the animals, I love you. And that's the end of our story. There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. Today, as we read, we learned some new words. We learned the word stew, a thick soup made of vegetables or meat. I wonder if you've ever tried a stew, or if you might be inspired by this book to try one. We learned the word tatty. Tatty means old, torn, worn out. We also learned the word mend. Mend means to fix. So the little old woman fixed these tatty clothes. They're not tatty anymore. And the last word that we learned was hullabaloo. Sometimes our classroom sounds like this. There's a big hullabaloo in our classroom, a lot of noise, a lot of activity and movement. Hopefully your house doesn't feel like a big hullabaloo very often. Hopefully you're getting to do some relaxing and staying calm when you're at home with your family. But I hope you enjoyed this book. There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. If you remember some of the new words that we learned, you can try to use them throughout the day. You can teach them to your families. All right, Rockets, I'll see you next time for another story. Maybe we'll learn some new words from that book too. Bye.